What's up guys, it's Wilson, also known as Designedbywil, and in today's video we're going to be learning how to get the perfect grunge streetwear look for your brand. Now I have dropped a PSD file in my Studio Will Patreon. If you guys don't want to follow this and you just drop in your design in the selected folder to get the grunge look. And this is a client project, but I will be doing a full walkthrough of exactly what I'm thinking and doing for the main selected parts of the design, but I will have timestamps for the grunge look if you guys want to go straight to that. The design itself is inspired by Aztec and the pyramids in Mexico, so he wanted to sort of bring that into the design, but more in a more modern look and in this design style that you guys have seen me do before. And yeah, that was the primary focus for this. So once you got the design cut out how you want it, you just want to center it, make sure it's looking good. I always center my images once I have them cut out, so it makes sense. Then you want to go to adjustments and click threshold, and then just slide this threshold up and down until you got your desired look. Preferably you want a nice balance between shadows and highlights. You don't want it to be too dark because then it doesn't make sense unless that's what you're going for. Now I'm just going to jump straight into Illustrator and make a sun. Now these suns have been going around and they're very popular at the moment. I like to make them from scratch, one, because then people can't just grab it off Pinterest, and two, I feel like it just gives you a little bit more creative freedom when you make stuff from scratch. Now I'm going to be jumping between Illustrator and Photoshop a lot in this one, mainly because most of the handwritten and icons sort of are going to be designed in Illustrator, then dragged into Photoshop, and then put the effects in Photoshop. And that's how I usually operate, and I tell people learn both, don't just learn one of them. And I've just copied and pasted the sun into Photoshop just to see how it's going to look. Now obviously these mountains and statues and pyramids were used to sacrifice things and like offers to the gods, or like there were temples of gods, and in this particular one I believe it was a temple for a serpent god, I believe, and I'm going to be using that also as a reference for the back piece of this design. Now obviously you can see me here just stuck because I don't know exactly what I really want, and it's not really making sense to me right now, but this is just the process in how I design, and this is why client projects tend to take a lot longer than when I do YouTube videos. So yeah, we're just gonna jump back into Illustrator and just play with this one more time. Yet again, I did use the rotation tool and just the shape to build this sort of sun design, and it's fairly simple to construct with any shape as long as you know how to use the rotation tool. And I've just wanted to build some dimension in the design itself, and this is going to be one of the focal pieces in the design, opposed from the typeface, which is going to have color, and also the pyramid, obviously, because it's probably the biggest thing on the design. Now right here I'm trying to bring the logo into the design without making it too obvious. We'll make it a little bit discreet because the primary focus is the Aztec pyramids, etc. And yeah, so this is what I'm doing. I'm just building this sun icon. Once we have that, we're just going to do the same thing to these rectangular shapes, and we're going to make a starburst slash a firework burst. That's what I like to call them, just a firework burst. And this is going to be behind the design just to bring everything together, and have like a nice little direction, an assortment, sorry, of directional lines pointing towards the middle. Now I'm just using a bunch of design terms so I can justify my very expensive degree. Next, we're gonna bring everything together to see how that looks. Now those three things were the primary things that I'm going to be doing, and the rest of this is just going to be me playing with placements, so enjoy the fast forward. Now in the fast forward, I just use an offset path to build up the width and bulk of that typography. Now I'm just jumping back into Illustrator, mainly to work on the slogan, sort of the main message behind this brand, which is winning takes sacrifices. And that's going to be the primary thing on this t-shirt. And the sacrifice is obviously going to the club, because in the clubs in America where the client stays at, it's 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. So we're trying to bring in that messaging without making it too corny. And you can also see me in the fast forward. If you go back, I'm hiding the bottom of the pyramid mainly because it looks unfinished and uncut. So when you're designing stuff, you never want to have like a limb hanging out cut off or something like that, and I try to apply that to all objects. I want to make them fit in naturally. Now with this 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., I'm trying to make it look grunge strictly in Illustrator without bringing it into Photoshop. And the way I'm doing that is basically I'm just using a lot of offset path and building new shapes within the typography, and then trying to reproduce that over and over again until it looks unfinished. So here I'm like placing it oddly and then cutting it out, and then placing it oddly again and then cutting it out again, to have like this torn effect, but using Illustrator's shape builder, which I think was a pretty cool move. But yeah. Another slogan the client wanted to add into the design, this one in particular, was half asleep right now, which correlates with the 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. thing. But yeah, I'm just jumping back and forth in between Illustrator and Photoshop like I stated before. And most of the stuff that I'm doing is just arranging the type so it fits a little bit better with the design. I ended up making the half asleep right now hand-drawn. That's like when most things get hard, just do it yourself. So you hand draw it, and then that becomes harder, and then now you're in the cycle. But yeah, it's really nice to have Photoshop and Illustrator because you can literally just highlight, copy, and then go into Photoshop and paste. But you can't do it vice versa, which sucks. But yeah. Now this is what the design is looking like currently. At this point, it's been around an hour and a half into the design. I know you guys are saying, oh, that looked like it would have taken 10 minutes, but I'm telling you, composition and typography will have you messed up when it comes to design, especially if you want to get something perfect. Now I'm just trying to find the old privacy draft file, because I have all the logos and stuff that I did in there, and I'm trying to incorporate just the main circle logo of privacy into the design. This was another design that I did for privacy, but we want mainly this thing, and we're just trying to incorporate that into the sun and the whole idea behind that. Up to this point, the design is somewhat where I want it. Sorry, I can't speak English, unfortunately. And now we're basically just gonna hand draw on the privacy. So we're gonna use the one we made in Illustrator as a stencil, mainly because I don't feel like it's fitting well into the design, and I want a more personal touch to this project, because as until now, I've just mainly been using a lot of type and found images. But you know, to level up a design, you want to incorporate something that no one else has, but if they do have it, they probably hand draw it too. So yeah, so I'm just gonna fast forward this little hand drawing montage. I'm drawing on my tablet, which I've connected to my laptop, and it's just a tablet that I've had forever. It's a beginner tablet, and yeah. After I have the design or hand drawn, I usually just add it to my libraries, and then I drag that into Illustrator and then image trace it so the type can be as clean as possible. Because when you're drawing in Photoshop, you're drawing with pixels and it gets pixelated. So just converting that into Illustrator, doing the image trace thing, and then getting that fine and then putting that back into Photoshop is the best option to get the cleanest looking designs. I know it is a longest step, and if you just have Photoshop, the hand drawn Photoshop is just fine. You don't have to do all this, but this is just the steps that I take when I do client projects, because that's what they deserve the best, you know. So now that we got our design to the stage that we want it to look like, it's time to add the grunge effect. So now, after all that hard work of getting your design ready, doing all the sketches and everything, you're gonna want to go on Unsplash. Now this isn't unsponsored by Unsplash, but I always say just use Unsplash because they got the best images. And you want to find a sort of grunge, sort of concrete look, and this one fits perfectly with the design. And you just want to download it and just drag it into your Photoshop file. Now there's two primary steps of this to get it exactly how you want, so just watch carefully so we don't have any questions, please. Just drag in the photo, and I was a bad boy and didn't scale it, and you just want to make a mask on the folder with all your designs in, and then go to adjustment layers, get threshold, and get it to how you want it to look like. So you want a balance. You don't want it to look too grunge unless that's what you're going for. Convert that to a smart object. You don't need to, but just convert it to a smart object. Go to select, color range, and select the black only, the black particles. After you have that selected, go back to the mask, use a bucket fill, whatever you want to call it, select black, and then fill that in, and you're gonna have this wonderful cracked vintage look design without having to do too much. Now you can go in the mask and flip it around to get the perfect look, or where you want the grunge to be more maximized or minimized. And you can also go in with a brush on that mask and add some more distressing if needed, but essentially this is how you get the perfect grunge look without doing too much. Now next, we're just gonna add some color. So I'm gonna just fast forward this part because colors are whatever you want to make them. And the tone I was going for was more like yellow, muddish type tones to mainly fit the aesthetic of the whole Mexican aesthetic and branding. And we're gonna bring the identity in. I'm also gonna be using a lot of strokes, so I just use the fill in blending options, or the color overlay, and then I use that with the combination of the stroke to have a little outline to make it look like a stencil, and give that vintage like design look. Because when you have a fill just like this, as you can see, it's not that flattering and the design doesn't stand out that much. finally, you just want to go and grab the asset pack that I've just released, either on my Patreon if you're a Patreon member, or on my website. I'm just using the simple t-shirt because I feel like that suits the design best. And I've added the design into my libraries because it's the easiest way to transfer files from Photoshop into Illustrator without having to export as a PNG. And I usually approach it this way. And then we're just going to place it on the t-shirt and scale it down. And boom, that's how you get the best grunge look. Now, obviously I have a back design, but this video is going to carry on if I do the whole back design too. But yeah, that's how you get the look of this whole vintage looking t-shirt without having to do too much.